Models of brain recognition help inform us whether we're understanding the brain right. But today's best models are hiding casino card dealers shoved into neurons. If you go to PhD level seminars, which I love to go to, you'll often hear them lament that brain understanding and current models based on AI models are poor for a neuroscience model. But the reality is very few researchers deviate from it. When you look at the bulk of papers and the millions of dollars given in grants are motivated by these models. So then why do they say that in neuroscience seminars? Although elegant, these models are hiding an elephant in the room. No, even bigger. A gambling operation. A casino full of dealers. All inside the little neurons. And all in order to get the model to work. And the problem is that most research is funded based on questions generated by a model. So if the model is wrong, it is possible that most of the research based on it is ineffective. Models of neurons have dendrites and axons, and the dendrites have individual weights. And this is what most of the models boil down the neurons to. The dendrites serve as input, which are electrical signals they receive, and the weights are multiplied by those inputs and summed as the outputs. That is expressed through the axon. And this is the basis of brain sensory recognition of AI-based models and neural networks. Now, I really don't like the term neural networks. It's a very, very, very assumptive name. It is not clear that the brain is working like the neural networks are. So basically, the theory is all the neurons, when you're using a neural network, are doing multiplications. This is a simple and elegant model, and in certain scenarios, very powerful. So the key to these types of algorithms is to find a set of supposed neuron weights by trying out all the inputs until you get the outputs you desire. And this ends up being a trial and error process, which is these days often synonymous with the idea of learning. Again, a huge assumption. Why would you assume that learning is a trial and error process? Moreover, many sets of weights may give the same answer in a multiplication problem. Imagine one weight reduced while another weight in another dendrite increased, giving the overall sum the same number. Sometimes there could be as many solutions as stars. So when are they right? Are negative numbers okay? What do they mean in neurons, these negative numbers? Are large numbers okay? Are little tiny numbers okay? I ignore these questions and focus on the more serious problem of the gambling problem. The equivalent of card dealers is essential for models to find weights, but there is no real evidence of this in biology. For example, I am going to use a deck of cards to help explain what I mean. So I can show a human a card, and if motivated, they have the ability to learn and recognize by seeing it only once and not having to rehearse all the other patterns that they've seen. Now, I'm not asking when was the last time you've seen this card. I'm asking, have you ever seen this before? And the point is, for humans and animals, that's all that's needed. But AI is different. And previously learned patterns would need to be rehearsed, and all the weights are reset. This means that if I know 40 patterns, let's say, and I want to learn one new pattern, What I would have to do is put in the card, randomly shuffle it, then present each pattern to the network one by one until the network doesn't make any more errors. This is part of this trial and error process. And it can take hundreds of repeats or even never happen. It may fail to converge and find the right weights. And the more patterns you know, the more you need to shuffle. And then let's say you learn the 40 patterns or the 41 patterns, and now you want to learn the 42nd pattern. So guess what you have to do? You have to take the whole deck of cards, take the new pattern, add that, reshuffle everything, and start from the beginning. So every time you want to learn a new one, you may have to learn all of them from the beginning. Put the card in, reshuffle. This process, the whole needing a deck of cards, needing to shuffle, represents the hidden gambling operations that are embedded in neurons. Because in reality, if you want to build a biologically plausible model of a process that requires this, well, you need to build within the model neurons that store the pattern for every card, that pull out the pattern randomly, which represents shuffling, to another mechanism that's doing the learning, and go through the whole process of presenting. So basically everything that the dealer has to do in order to shuffle and present for this model. And this presentation has to be very careful not to repeat patterns more than the frequency they're present in the card deck. And the problem is there's virtually no evidence that the brain is doing any of these operations. No evidence of shuffling and accounting that would be needed by the casino. Now there is a structure called the hippocampus in the brain, and some researchers say it might have something to do with rehearsal because there's evidence of rehearsal. But that rehearsal is not random. It rehearses sequences and spaces that the animal experiences. Moreover, even with most of the hippocampus removed, the brain can learn to recognize patterns and even perform complex tasks based on new patterns. So what happens in these models when there's no shuffling? Well, the networks will forget the first cards. And in the literature, this is called various names: catastrophic interference, catastrophic forgetting, or the stability plasticity problem. This is a fundamental problem with AI that's not explicit in biological model. This is also why what's called one-shot learning, learning by seeing a pattern at once, is very difficult for current brain and AI theories. And the core problem is models of the brain should be explicit, but they're not. That's why most predominant models of sensory recognitions are hiding card dealers within the model. And because these underlying models are essential in guiding experiments, there's a huge gap that needs to be fixed before research can move forward. And apart from the groanings at neuroscience conferences, this is not happening. Let me give you a little bit more nomenclature if you want to look into these algorithms. The multiplication of inputs multiplied by the weights to get the outputs is also called feed-forward because information flows from one direction, from the input, usually labeled X, to the output labeled Y during recognition. AI models using feed-forward neural network weights are often called by different names like deep learning or machine learning models. The feed-forward multiplication can happen in layers. They might even have a nonlinearity in between. And if there's more interest, I'm happy to make a video of different types of network models and different types of computational models as well. Let me know in the comments. The shuffling process is more formally called IID in mathematics, and that's independently and identically distributed. And this describes the shuffling process, where all patterns are presented in fixed frequencies in random order. Now, there's also a term in AI called epoch, where if you have more patterns than, say, you can fit in your hand or in a deck of cards, what you would do is take a subsample of that, shuffle, present, and then repeat. Take another subsample, and that's an epoch. Please ask questions in the comments. Leave me suggestions on how to explain this better. From my experience, I think this is the most important thing that needs to be understood in order for research to move forward. So please subscribe, and in subsequent videos, I'll answer questions from previous ones. As always, thank you.